You're the power play batsman.
I think I'm the slog over, getting her up. Yeah.
S. Jaishankar isn't contesting the 2024 elections. But that does not mean he doesn't have a major role to play in it. For the last month, he's been traveling the length and breadth of the country, from Kerala to Kolkata, speaking to the people about what his government has done, its track record in the last 5 years.
I think everybody in a team has a role. Everybody cannot be the same.
And at this time, his role is unlike anyone else's in the government. From handling the everyday dynamics of India's fast-changing, often contentious position in global geopolitics, to reacting to remarks from US President Joe Biden about India being xenophobic. It's all in a day's work for India's External Affairs Minister. The Economic Times invited Minister Jaishankar to its office for a freewheeling conversation that ranged from the India-US relationship to terror elements in Canada to the Israel-Hamas war, Myanmar, Pakistan, Nehru, to the OTT series that he is currently watching. We are starting this week with edited excerpts of this exclusive conversation with the wide span of ET's editorial team. From its executive editor Shrutijit KK, its executive editor Politics Pranab Dhal Samanta, diplomatic editor Dipanjan Roy Chaudhary, to many other journalists in ET bureaus across cities and verticals. It's Tuesday, the 7th of May. I'm Anirban Chaudhary. This is the Morning Brief.
Dr. Jaishankar here needs no introduction. Obviously, the External Affairs Minister. He's been a career Foreign Service officer for 4 decades. And very few have the opportunity of heading the ministry which they have served. He's one of them, and probably will remain for a long time. So without much ado, I'll start. The elections have caught on. We are done with 2 phases. Third phase is going to happen on Tuesday. I know you're a cricket enthusiast, so I will use that parlance. How is it? What is the score run rate of your team at this point in time? What's the pitch report, and what kind of a target are you going to set?
I think target's been fairly clearly set. That's so far. I think there's no ambiguity there. My sense is the first 2 phases they were spread across the country, but they had a significant focus on the south, especially Tamil Nadu, Kerala, which for us is in a way an area which is relatively untested, or I would say a place where we've been active for a long time, but that activity hasn't translated in the past into seats. We know, we can sense that we're going to obviously do very much better than we did in the past. So, and quite honestly, the expectation is we'll pick up some seats there.
Well, the first 2 phases last time, if correct me, they had about 90 seats actually. The first out of the 190 seats. After 190 which have gone, what number would you put yourself?
No, I wouldn't give you a number. There's a scorer out there who's doing all that. But for me, the interesting possibilities are Kerala, Tamil Nadu. Also, I was in Telangana, where the voting will take place on the 13th. And what will happen there? Because I think in each case, for a different set of reasons, we can see the dynamic is moving in our favor. How much in our favor is the big question, and that we'll know only on when the votes are counted.
To start with, just wanted to put you a question in from our online team, since they are the most active in following the latest trends. So there's a statement by Mr. Joe Biden which has come out today, in which he seems to be calling India, Russia and China xenophobic because we don't welcome immigrants. And Japan. So he's punched us with that, and he's saying that's why the economy is faltering. Your comments on that, sir?
No, first of all, our economy is not faltering. to, India's been a very unique country, I would say, actually, in the history of the world. That it's been a society which has been very open, different people from different societies, particularly people in trouble, have come to India. That's why we have the CAA, so which is to open up doors for people who are in trouble. So I quite see the point. I think we should be open to people who have the need to come to India, who have a claim to come to India. That would be my answer.
So there have been few killings on foreign soils, people who are wanted by India, and there have been reports in the international press about India's involvement in those killings. Your comments?
People get killed in Pakistan. It's not news. Okay, Pakistanis kill Pakistanis. That is also not news. Terrorists are there in large numbers. Statistically, if they're in large numbers, things will happen to them. Now, they have created an industry which is, the terrorist industry has its own, shall I say, ways of working and happening. So, things could happen there. People have been warning Pakistan for a long time. Forget India. You had America, you had an American foreign minister who very publicly, Hillary Clinton, who very publicly warned Pakistan. So, if you have a cast of characters like this who apparently are your sterling contributions to whatever activities you take pride in, I guess some things are a natural outcome of that, no?
So to link that with a question again from online, which is linked to your answer here, these pro-Gaza protests on US campuses have gone violent, and some Indians and students have also been impacted. So how have things gone wrong, and how have we reached this point?
We haven't reached the point. They have reached this point. We are fine. We are fine. When we have an issue, we know how to handle that issue. And it is very clear when you look at how they've handled the issue, the way we handled it is right.
Coming to the south, you have rightly said that BJP had a lot of focus this time in the elections in southern countries. Prime Minister was leading and all of you were campaigning. You and the Finance Minister as the most high profile representation in the government from the south, apart from your own expertise in your respective ministries. So there were a lot of expectation that BJP's south push will have you and the Finance Minister also contesting the election. Finance Minister has recently given some reason for not contesting. Have you had any thought about contesting or any reason for finally not choosing?
No, I had no reason for not contesting or for contesting. I awaited what was the decision of the leadership. And the view in the leadership was that someone like me is best used across the country. In the last few weeks, I've just come out of Telangana, Karnataka, Kerala, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Mizoram. I'm heading for Orissa, Bengal, Maharashtra and Punjab. So I wouldn't be able to do this if I were focused on a single constituency. So I think, you gave an analogy of cricket. I think everybody in a team has a role. Everybody cannot be the same. So different people will be used for different things. So I was told fairly early on, saying, please travel around, speak about what the government has done, the track record of the government, and that's really what I've been doing.
I have one question. What would you say are the top 3 ways in which India's foreign policy has changed in the last 10 years?
I would say one, it has changed in the sense of realism. We are very much more clearly focused on what is good for India, what is in India's interest. We are, for us, as you say, Bharat First is in many ways the basic metric by which we look at most situations. A subset of that, we are also not vote bank driven. So in previously that was very much a consideration. You saw that particularly with respect to Israel. So sometimes people ask me, because there is a very wrong assumption that governments change but foreign policy doesn't change. It will change, because a different party with a different vichardhara and a different set of assumptions has come to power with a different set of priorities. So if I were to give you an example, I use typically 4 examples with people. The kind of left-wing reservations that we historically had about dealing with the United States, I think that changed very sharply after 2014. That a lot of our problems with the US, there was a US end of that problem. I'm not saying it wasn't there, but we had a lot of self-imposed constraints and I would say reservations about dealing with the US, which were fundamentally ideological on our part. A second example would be China, that this belief that, on a whole lot of issues we can make common cause, and my friend Jairam Ramesh took it to a philosophical degree with Chindia. Now, actually there's a continuity in the Congress policy. Chindia is the updated form of Panchsheel. The idea is the same behind both, which is that fundamentally we have convergence with China, and therefore, and in many cases that took previous Indian governments to even put Chinese interests ahead of our own. So when it comes to China, actually there's a far more hard-headed policy. When it comes to Pakistan, I think the kind of turning the other cheek and living with terrorism, we started this whole session with that issue. That itself is revealing that today the answer is no, we will not let him dictate the play. So to me, those are one set of examples. The other is there is a much stronger connect today between economic requirements of the country and foreign policy. That when we look at our partners, one big part of our thinking is what is it in that relationship which can help drive economic growth, and how do you therefore make sure that as many options are possible. And the third difference, I think, is civilization, cultural, that we actually have that sense of Bharat, that we are proud of our history, traditions. We today make an effort to ensure that, Indian heritage in the world is recognized and respected, that our cultural traditions and practices are given the kind of space in foreign countries that they deserve. So we are standing up for cultural India, and we think previous governments didn't do that.
You do feel the need to distinguish yourself when you look at Israeli actions in Gaza at the moment, because you also have a large minority population. You do feel that those pressures, as we cannot say that it's so black and white. It's just put it on Israel.
No, let's look at our Israel position. October 7th, is it terrorism or was it not terrorism? The Congress party has a problem saying it is terrorism. They choke when it comes to that. You saw the waffling which happened. We had no problem. Okay. If somebody has been a victim of terrorism, do they have a right to respond? Do they not have a right to respond? Now, having said that, there are 2-3 issues. This has nothing to do with vote bank. Anybody undertaking any action has to be careful about civilian casualties. I mean, I would say this even to our own forces if we are ever in that situation, which I know hopefully we will not be. Then there is the two-state solution. I mean, we would support a two-state solution because that is the sensible thing to do if you want stability in that vital part of the world. It's a geopolitical, geostrategic assessment that we have. So I would argue that there is a fundamental difference between the way the Congress party looked at the Middle East and the way we looked at it.
If I take the PM's interview, I mean the part of the China, and he was saying that normal relations. I mean, somewhere it is felt that post-election there might be nuance, and there are some reports that we might allow case by case these Chinese investments in manufacturing, which of course with the red lines. I mean, in certain areas, many areas they are not allowed because of the sensitivity. How are we looking at a nuance policy when it come to China, investments from China? We will shift a shift, but not a fundamental shift.
And your real interest in the second part of the question. No, I saw where you're going. Look, what the Prime Minister said is something which we have consistently said. Essentially, I can't give you word by word quote, but essentially the Prime Minister said the relations are abnormal and we want to see normalcy, but normalcy will only happen if there's peace and tranquility in the border. Now, the second issue on the economic issue. See, there are two parts to it. One part of it is straightforward economic, where you have a country whose manufacturing practices, I think, put the rest of the world at a disadvantage. And we are entirely within our rights to ensure that our manufacturers, particularly our SMEs and our labor, our working classes, their interests are protected. As someone who spends a lot of time with SMEs, who's lived in Noida for much of my life, I can tell you how strong that sense of resentment is today about dumping of goods from China. So we will do what it takes. The second is there are sensitive sectors. Every country today has the right to manage its sensitive sectors in a way in which it is in consonance with its national security. So the idea, and a lot of the globalization advocates, I think, need a basic lesson in national security. I mean, I cannot, in the name of open economy, open up my national security. And in terms of, how do you, where do you open up? Look, it's not like we are close to China. I mean, there are still economic transactions which are taking place. But economic transactions do require, in today's world, do require diligence, do require scrutiny, do require examination. Don't buy this line that somewhere, great good will come out of free flows. I mean, if developed economies can be hollowed out in the way in which they have been hollowed out, what do you think will happen to you if you follow on that same path? We're not going to make that mistake.
Add to what Dipanjan asked, while we have gained from this China plus strategy, some of our suppliers like Apple, they are really hurting because they can't move their supplies from China to India. Is there a middle, while we understand what you're saying, is there a middle path where we can some way come to an agreement?
On the contrary, I'm sorry, I disagree with you. I mean, we are in touch regularly with Apple, and I think it's not like people are that inflexible and, solutions have not been found. On the contrary, please look at Apple's performance. I mean, they're doing splendidly, and please ask him what complaints he has. We're not impractical people, don't get me wrong. We want to see global companies come to India. If global companies have prior vendors and supply chains, we're not impervious. Nobody has said Chinese companies can't come to India. On the contrary, we have only said we will examine, we will scrutinize, we will try to understand who is coming here for what.
So on the, there have been a lot of incidents involving and the talks on the Lawrence Bishnoi gang and, gangsters operating basically out of India, influencing things in India. And we have been trying to sort them out. We've been trying to do interaction. But do you think this is a big threat to internal and external security in the country?
I suspect you want to ask me about gangs operating outside India.
So gangs who are operating in India, but their leaders are outside of India.
Look, that is a concern to us. In fact, it's very much a part of our conversations, which I would confess have not been very successful with Canada, that we have repeatedly told Canada that you, for some reason, seem to be very open about providing haven to organized crime from our country. And we believe they're doing it for vote bank reasons. So, are they a problem? Of course, they are a problem. But we are trying to convince the Canadians they're a problem for Canadians too. That if you have organized crime, I mean, we have, I don't remember the exact number, but I think 25 or 26 significant extradition requests of Canada. Many of them relate to organized crime. And we've been repeatedly telling the Canadians that if you actually allow such forces to set up shop and create networks, this is going to harm your own society. But so far, I don't think that advice has been well heeded.
Mr. Minister, so you talked about some of the neighbors like China and Pakistan. We already talked. So I want to ask about Myanmar, particularly in the backdrop of recent development last 8-9 months. Some of the rebels have actually taken over some of their provinces, like Saigao or the Chin. So we saw in our neighborhood. And you can see the flag from our side, which is not Myanmar's flag, or rather, it is Chin National Front's flag. So, in that case, how challenging this Myanmar imbroglio for New Delhi?
Well, you are right in flagging attention to it, because essentially across our borders today, pretty much across the length of our borders, the people in control are not the central authorities. So there are different groups and organizations who are in control. Now, this is not my country. Okay, what I am doing is the sensible thing, which is I am at least now protecting my border, which till now was in many ways a somewhat open border. So we are looking at what we need to do so that we don't have, if things get worse, we don't have flows of people who would be destabilizing for us. So it is a situation of great concern, and you have you have to kind of get the balance right here, because there are ethnicities which are across the border. At the same time, as I said, the flow of people, these are all, there's a lot of, by the way, there's been a big pickup of organized crime and narcotics flow and all of that. So that's also a big worry for us. So I have to look at the stability and law and order on one hand, the ethnicity of people, the interstate relationship, and the practicalities of managing a border. I have to get this balance right.
If we can talk about the US elections, Trump is back as a candidate. 4 years back, we had Namaste Trump. Are we going to have a favorite this time?
No, look, we don't have a favorite. I mean, I tell people our preferred partner in the United States is the President of the United States, whoever he or she may be. So people, I think, sometimes overread it, distort it, try to make out that there's more. I mean, just and this is not even a Trump issue. I mean, I go back to Bill Clinton onwards, that you had Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, 5 American presidents, each one completely unlike any of the others, from very different positions in the American political spectrum. But we have shown the ability to get along with all of them. And in fact, I would argue that once we get over these ideological hang-ups, it is even now more easier for us actually to work with whoever he or she in the US may be.
No, but since you mentioned the ideological aspect, I mean, is
on
BJP,
our end.
Yeah, but is BJP
Not on their end. That's
no,
their
that,
business.
I mean, Republicans seem to be liked more by the BJP, is it?
No, look, I'm not sure I would agree with you there, because we've had a great working relationship with Biden. I mean, if you look at it, the Quad has grown from strength to strength. I mean, the Quad has got upgraded to the PM level. The US was actually a crucial player on IMEC. US is one of the partners on I2U2. So if if you look even at the changes which we are doing, a lot of them involves the US. So I think these very sharp binaries, they don't reflect. I mean, it's not like Congress goes this way and BJP goes that way.
There was a lot of excitement around Tesla and Musk visit. That hasn't happened. So where are we on that? And secondly, on Maldives, the ruling party again had a landslide victory. So where are we on those?
My understanding on Tesla is that Tesla has to, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business and it takes business calls. I assume that anything they do or don't do or decide not to do today but may do or may not do is all business driven. So for anybody to read anything more than business into it, I think is really not justified. They've been having their own debates, they've been having their own challenges. That's quite visible. On Maldives, look, every one of our neighbors, they have their own political processes, like we have our political processes. We need to give them that space. Now, the political process may throw up someone who may be a bit more enthusiastic working with us, and or may throw up someone who's less enthusiastic. Now, we have to live with it. I mean, that is the verdict of their system and their people. But I think we shouldn't get sort of overheated on this issue, because the fact is, neighbors are neighbors, and there are certain compulsions and certain structural sort of linkages here which come from being in the neighborhood. So I'm quite sure that despite all the ups and downs of the last few months, at some stage the relationship will steady out, and we will reach some accommodation. That eventually is where relationships usually end up. I think you've been
Sir,
repeatedly.
I have a Nehru question. He figures prominently in your remarks, and you mentioned changing Vichardhara in governments. Now, has your own Vichardhara on Nehru changed from when you were a foreign service officer to when you are a minister?
No, my Vichardhara on Nehru has not changed. I mean, do understand what I am trying to say. I am trying to say that in the foreign policy for which Nehru had a predominant role for the first 18 years of our existence, and the assumptions which his successors carried forward, there were some significant shortcomings and flaws and errors of judgment. I don't think this is something I needed to join the BJP or retire from service to have. When I was it was Indian foreign service, it was not Nehru's foreign service. Let's be very clear on that. Most of us who, for example, dealt with China felt that the 1950, that the whole Panchsheel era was a fundamental misreading of China. Or if I go back even earlier, and I've actually written about it, the Nehru-Patel debate of how to handle China. So it's not a sentiment any of us, I mean, not just me. We didn't need to be out of the government to understand the truth about Nehru. It was staring us in the face. It stared the nation in the face in 1962. I mean, please read the letter that Nehru writes to Kennedy after Bombdilla fell, and tell me how you feel about it. That how could our country have been brought down to such a situation where you're begging somebody? So I read that 62 letter 50 years ago, maybe more. So this is not politics.
Sir, does India's digital public infrastructure have an increasing role to play in our diplomacy, foreign relations, and statecraft?
Yes, I think it does. In fact, when I travel out, I see a lot of interest in what we have done in terms of digital delivery. That the rampant corruption which characterized our public services, I think the rest of the world looks at this, this enormous transformation of the last decade. And there's a lot of interest whether, it can be borrowed or transposed or shared or so I think there's real global interest. I've had prime ministers and presidents of different countries or finance ministers of different countries actually talk to me about it. So we are actually today in, when we look at foreign policy is not just about politics. Foreign policy is also, I mean, a lot of it is about business, it is exports and investment, etc. But it's also about what is it you can share, what is it you can actually develop as something common with some other country. And definitely digital public infrastructure is one space where we think that we would be much more relevant to the world, in the global south especially.
So on the defense front, so the one major policy change the government has had in the past is this focus on defense exports. We were very reluctant to do lethal exports in the past. Now it's become a big thing. So where does India see itself as a provider of security and to our neighbors, or where Where do we want to stand as a defense industrial complex?
I would actually put defense exports not as the derivative. The primary change is in Make in India. That we today have a strong insistence that as far as possible with as many partners on as many products or capabilities, to the extent they can be fully or partly or collaboratively produced in India. We think that is good for us because that is part of building your manufacturing, because that the manufacturing involved in defense also gets involved in non-defense and vice versa. I think first of all you have today a shift in our thinking on manufacturing. Now defense is something where your domestic market there's only one user. So once you become a defense manufacturer, I would say it stands to reason you will become a defense exporter. Once you become a defense exporter, why should you have those constraints again? I mean, everybody else exports defense products and services. Why should you be holier than the rest of them and bind yourself down? Business is business. So therefore, I would say defense exports to defense industry, to Make in India, to manufacturing, to actually getting yourself into a balanced economy. And I think this is the kind of thinking which was really missing till the last decade.
You have played two important roles in your life. Which one you like, being a diplomat or a politician? How do you find this?
And in fact, there's a related point with that.
And to add to that, I mean, you joined in a different era.
Well, there's one thing common between when I joined and now. I tell people, I had a Gujarati PM then, I have a Gujarati PM now. So that is common. But I mean, they're obviously very different jobs. Okay. When you are in a diplomatic profession, you want to do the best you can, and you function in that with that framework and those rules and that culture. And when you move into a political role, you adjust to that. So if you ask me, has there been an adjustment from being a diplomat to a politician? Of course there has been. I mean, first of all, the circle of people with whom you work are very different. The issues are very different. But if I were to compare the two, I would say, to my benefit, that your world has expanded. So to me, the difference really between the two is I am today much more holistic, or the factors which go into my thinking are very much more. I have a much more grounded sense of what is happening in the country, what are the say issue of interest to your paper. I mean, my own understanding of our economic and business policies has definitely improved in the last 5 years when I was a minister, because I hear so much about the economic challenges and the opportunities and the decisions that we make. So there is actually almost, I would say, a kind of an education out there. But there is one common thing I have between both, which is, when you are a diplomat, you deal with a whole set of challenges and often crises and situations. You do the same as a political person, maybe on multiple domains. And the one common thing in both, at the end of the day, to me, is really the quality of leadership.
Do you still find time to play your favorite sport, and what is your favorite OTT series, and what would you like to recommend us to watch?
Not always, but I still play regularly. I play squash every morning or evening if I can, mostly mornings. So I kept it up for 50 years now, and I'm still at it. I actually just saw the remake of Shogun, which I don't know if any of you have seen. I'd seen the old one some years ago. So it keeps moving on, depending on where you are at which place.
That's it for today. We hope you liked listening to this exclusive roundtable conversation with S. Jaishankar. This episode was produced by Surohini Jain and sound designed by Amrit Reddy. Please like, share and subscribe to The Morning Brief that drops every Tuesday to Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Keep listening. Have a good week.